If you followed reporting about the drone swarms in New Jersey, I've got some bad news for you. You're probably less informed than if you knew absolutely nothing about them.
Car-sized drones operating for hours in restricted airspace and able to elude local law enforcement when they send their own drones up to give chase.
I've followed drone incursions for a long while, so I was fascinated by the story from the get-go. But the more I dug into it, the less anything made sense. The irony is that there is a drone mystery that's been ongoing for at least 5 years, and the Pentagon is either lying about it or we have a serious military vulnerability that everyone should worry about. Something real is going on, but the deeper that I went into New Jersey, it became clear that the press had done an embarrassing job of reporting this. And social media sites are basically garbage. Almost everything we've heard about New Jersey is absolute nonsense. Almost everything. Hey, I'm Ken LaCourte. If you love conspiracies and want to live in a continual state of wonder, this isn't the video for you. But if you want to make some sense of a lot of conflicting information and understand what the heck is going on in New Jersey, hang around for a few minutes because I've got some answers for you. Let's start on the evening of November 18th, when people in northern New Jersey started seeing something strange in the sky. Dozens of people told authorities that a group of large drones, about the size of cars, were flying for hours. And at times a helicopter was circling them as well.
They look like a small car to me. Their wingspans are probably 6 feet across.
I think the creepy part is not that it's just a drone, that they're so large.
It hit social media, and soon the first images of the drones appeared online. Now, they didn't show much, but the first and best videos of the drones look like this. The helicopter, turns out, belonged to the New Jersey State Police. Now, the next day, a leading military news site reported that the U.S. Army's Picatinny Arsenal was trying to figure out what was flying over and near its base. The arsenal is a weapons research and manufacturing facility, and it said it had none of its own drones going in operation that day. Soon, things got nutty in New Jersey. Authorities were flooded with hundreds, then thousands of reported drones, 5,000 at last count. The U.S. military started giving bizarre answers, when they answered questions at all, and local authorities demanded answers and started freaking out a little bit. They said that the drones were coordinated. They stayed in the air for hours. They avoided detection and were well beyond the capabilities of private drones. And if you followed some serious military publications, none of this was new to you. Sophisticated drone incursions have been going on for years. It's a serious and underreported threat to America and a number of other countries as they've flown unhindered over our most secret military bases and infrastructure like nuclear power plants. Let's go back a few years to the summer of 2019 off the Southern California coast when the USS Kidd, a state-of-the-art Navy destroyer, became center stage in a series of unauthorized drone swarms. Over multiple nights, groups of unidentified drones, up to 6 at a time, buzzed around the Navy ships at will. These weren't your average commercial drones. They flew in coordinated formations. They lingered for hours. They repeatedly flew within 500 feet of the destroyers and sometimes went over 45 miles an hour and covered distances over 100 miles. Was it China or another country? Or maybe US prototype systems tested on unsuspecting military units? Whatever it was, it wouldn't be the last high-level drone incursion by a long shot. Now, I followed this and other drone stories for a long time at the War Zone, the military publication I mentioned earlier. They've been leading coverage on this for years. Now, I have nothing to do with them, but they do a fantastic job, relying heavily on first-hand documents and imagery, much of that they got themselves through Freedom of Information Act requests. And if you really want to learn about these stories in depth, check them out, because there are a lot of stories like this. For instance, later in 2019, a swarm of unidentified drones hovered over Arizona's Palo Verde nuclear generating station. It's the nation's largest nuclear power plant. They evaded attempts to track or intercept them. In Arizona, unidentified objects flying up to 36,000 feet high, nearly 600 miles per hour, were tracked at combat training ranges. At Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, a drone swarm came back for 17 days. As many as a dozen drones flew over the area that includes the Navy's SEAL Team 6 and Naval Station Norfolk, the world's largest naval port. U.S. Air Force General Mark Kelly estimated that one drone was 20 feet long and flying at over 100 miles an hour. And the Wall Street Journal reported that it kicked off 2 weeks of meetings at the White House. In August of 2024, the military confirmed that multiple drones, which they said ranged in size and configuration, had flown over the Air Force's Plant 42 in California, one of the nation's most highly classified facilities. And in the midst of the New Jersey drone drama, there were 6 instances of drones flying over the Marines' Camp Pendleton in California. And also within that same time frame, multiple drones, again of various sizes, were spotted over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, leading to the temporary closure of the airspace. Over the years, NORAD has cited over 600 drone incursions over U.S. military installations, and similar incursions have been happening in England, Germany, and Taiwan. Now, militaries all over the world have all sorts of crazy drones. Some can take off vertically and convert into a fixed-wing aircraft. Others can be refueled midair. Iran has ships used to launch drones like this one, and they have stealth drones to go on top of it. And China has a huge range of them, from a hypersonic drone that can be launched from the air and fly over 5,000 miles an hour. They have unmanned ships that can launch units, drones with machine guns, and some that can even be launched from underwater. But for all of the drone incursions over U.S. facilities, the Pentagon has given few details. Sometimes they say enough to make it clear that these aren't hobbyist drones or just some clown, but they rarely give any details about what they really know or what they don't know. In the New Jersey case, the federal response was atrocious.
These are not U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
Their message was twofold. One, they said they had no real idea of what these drones were or who was behind them. And two, they said, don't worry about it because they're not dangerous or flown by our enemies. They used weasel words like no evidence as yet, but their overarching message was contradictory in and of itself. You can't plead complete ignorance and at the same time assure people all's well. They don't believe you and they shouldn't. Now, most people remembered the Chinese spy balloon of 2023. The feds kept that quiet until a local newspaper took a picture of it. Even then, they downplayed it and pretended it didn't get data, something later shown to be false. In New Jersey, the feds basically stonewalled everyone, including local officials.
You were just inside. You walked out. Why?
I walked out because it was worthless. It was the biggest amateur hour presentation I've ever seen about anything, okay?
So with the federal government not giving information, state and local officials jumped in. They talked all the time and posted on Twitter. The problem is, they were a clown show. The former governor of Maryland posted this video with a long diatribe about how the government needed to, that turned out to be a star. Orion gets pretty bright in the sky. U.S. Senator Andy Kim went out with the police and saw all sorts of drones, even using a tracker app to distinguish them from planes. The next day, he backtracked and posted on X that, quote, after more analysis and help from civilian pilots, experts, and flight data, I've concluded the possible drone sightings pointed out to me were almost certainly planes. His first tweet got 7 million views. His retraction got 200,000 views, which is part of the messaging problem here. State Senator Doug Mastriano posted an angry attack on the federal government and attached this image of a crashed drone recovered in New Jersey. Closer analysis revealed it to be a TIE fighter. Now, the senator later tweeted out that of course he knew the image was a joke. I don't know. I think Republicans think he was joking and Democrats think he's an idiot. Other local officials gave us secondhand information that was hard to understand without details. The New Jersey governor said, quote, the minute you get their eyes on them, they go dark. But he had zero details. Other reports from law enforcement said that the drones had no heat signature. But again, no details. What kind of equipment, what kind of drones did they think that they were looking at? Other times, local officials are just worse than the fake news they complain about. Like the mayor of Belleville, New Jersey.
There was and there is an alert that's out right now that radioactive material in New Jersey has gone missing on December 2nd. It was a shipment. It arrived at its destination. The container was damaged and was empty. So
okay,
potentially
wait,
we're looking
stop
for
right
that.
there, Mayor, because that's very important information. And that came from a credible source.
That came from the U.S. government. Now,
they went on to hyperventilate about that for a bit, but the devil is in the details. I looked up the missing item. It contained trace amounts of germanium-68 used for CAT scan machines. It was depleted enough for them to only have to wrap it up with styrofoam to make it safe. There was hardly any radiation. Now, you don't upend New Jersey for that, and FedEx found it a few days later and it wasn't a big deal. Now, that mayor either knew that or he certainly should have, because it was there all along. But it created all sorts of headlines. Another big claim came from a congressman.
Last night, we had a number of other people there, including a commanding officer from the Coast Guard, who said that one of their 47-foot motor lifeboats was followed by between 12 and 30 of these drones as they went through the water, followed right behind them.
Now, it's just impossible to evaluate that. He has credibility, the Coast Guard has credibility, but no one's come out to give any additional details at all. He's talked about it a lot, but nothing from the Coast Guard. Now here, the ante gets raised up a bit.
One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
Now, if you're a good reporter, you don't let something like that stand as a fact just because the guy who said it is wearing a uniform. At a minimum, you track down the trooper and find out some details. You'd want to know, for instance, maybe if a group of Starlink satellites were recently launched. Those launch in clusters, and for the first few days of orbit, they stay in a formation and they look like this. And, as it turns out, and you could have found this online, there were 2 batches of them launched in Florida in early December that could have been exactly what that officer saw. We just don't know. Now, when more photos and videos first came in from New Jersey, I looked at least 100 of them. And bit by bit, day by day, any excitement that I had died. Now, let me be clear. It's really difficult to take good images of drones in the sky. You have a dark background, a dark object, and if it has bright lights on it, it's hard for even a professional camera to deal with those contrasts. Overall, the images fall into 2 categories: fuzzy lights and mechanical things in the sky. Let's start with fuzzy lights. The New York Times and others featured this photo, and many like it. But what are we looking at? Are those drones, planes, stars, planets? I don't know, and no one at the Times knows either. The photo was taken in Lebanon, New Jersey, and here are the airports that are in the nearby region. ABC News says these lights appear to be drones. Really? MSNBC called this a mysterious drone. Or maybe it's a comet, or a plane with landing lights on. Sometimes videos would show the lights moving and it'd be hard to explain.
There they are. There they are. There they are.
This was an interesting video of a New Jersey beach cam sped up about 5 times. The UFO guys call these orbs, but a Redditor overlaid that with a satellite tracker, and you can see they match the many satellites in the sky, mostly from Starlink, although most aren't reflected by the sun. And sometimes lens flare or rain does weird things. Maybe that's plasma or something bending the light, but these street lights are doing the same thing in another photo. Speaking of plasma orbs, ABC News showed us this footage shot with their professional equipment. You can find these orbs all over the internet because cameras do weird things, like add in colors, especially when they're out of focus. Here are 4 separate stars filmed the same way. I've seen dozens of these all over the internet, and I'm pretty sure they're all out of focus planes or stars or planets. Now, all said, even if we found a normal explanation for every image online, that doesn't mean there were no drones over Jersey. I believe there were. I'm just saying that everything that I looked at afterwards fell somewhere between that's clearly a plane and that's pretty fuzzy, so who really knows? And I'm really not trying to pick the stupidest ones. There are lots of those. I'm concentrating here on the most popular ones on social media or in the corporate press. This image, for instance, got huge play in USA Today. It was the lead story on ABC's Nightly News, and it's appeared in dozens of major sites, often with an article asking if it's okay to shoot them down. I mean, I hope not, because looking at it, not even that closely, it kind of looks like a helicopter. The rotor in the back and even the landing skids. And this was shot with a Sony A7 IV with a 600mm lens, which is a nice setup. And lo and behold, in New Jersey, at that time, there was a helicopter with the tail number N814U. And here's that helicopter. Now, this image is still regularly appearing in supposedly serious news sites everywhere, and it just shouldn't be. Look, I ran Fox News for a decade, so I have some experience in the behind the scenes in corporate media. So part of this is just them not doing their jobs properly. They're not trying to fool people for clicks, but they don't have as much expertise as you might think. They turn out a lot of content and just don't do the proper vetting that they should. I mean, at least Fox didn't get fooled by this one. Yeah, okay, moving on. Actually, no. Look, Fox has plenty of company in this awful coverage, but this is a plane. That's pretty clear to me. And back to social media, here was the top post on Reddit's UFO site for this month. You can see the camera artifacts that I mentioned earlier. Is it a drone? Is it a plane? It's nothing to really get worked up over. Now, this image got me for a bit because it looks like it could be a clear shot of a drone underbelly. But if you look at a picture of a Leonardo AW139 helicopter, you'll see that everything matches, down to the step rails. Oh, and by the way, the New Jersey State Police has 5 of them. Now, there was no way that the person who took that photo didn't clearly see and hear that helicopter. So I would say that only a few of the images I saw I would call a hoax, but this was one of them. And then finally, there's YouTube. I mean, as awful as the real media was, YouTube was even worse. I mean, there's no way to say it except that some of the YouTube bros are just taking people for a ride. Now, I don't like to complain, but some of those videos have gotten more views than my entire channel in a year of hard work. So if you wonder why we get fake news, it's because people click on it, and it's profitable for those guys. So where does this leave us? Well, we have a long, ongoing mystery about drone incursions that's worrisome. If it's the military being sneaky, that's the best case scenario. But there's a decent chance that it's an adversary, and if it is, there's a decent chance that adversary is China. But layered on top of that is a situation in Jersey that started with a serious drone incursion, but quickly turned into a three-ring circus. When people look up to the sky for the first time, they get confused and excited. Combine that with UFO grifters, YouTube nonsense, and a news media completely failing at its job, we have a story that's half concerning and half ridiculous. Now, I don't want to be in the business of telling people that Santa Claus doesn't exist, but I have some more bad news, and it's about penis size. A Stanford-led study looked at the data from over 50,000 men and concluded that over the past 30 years, the average penis length had grown by a full inch. But, as is often the case, things weren't like they appeared. Hey, thanks for joining me. I hope you learned something. I know I did. And if you did, come back again. Till then.